I said, what is a Django REST API or REST API? I said about what is API. So I said API stands for Application Programming Interface. And API is a collection of programs which are used by one application to communicate with another application. An API is a set of rules and regulations. These are called protocols that allows different softwares or applications to communicate with each other. So it acts as a bridge or messenger, taking a request from one system and delivering to what another and returning what here response. I said there are different types of APIs are there that is based on accessibility as well as architecture. Based on the architecture and accessibility, these APIs are classified into two categories. One is by access policies and one more is by architectural style. So there is a public APIs and there is a partner APIs. There is an internal APIs and there is a composite APIs. And by architectural style, you have a REST APIs and you have a SOAP API, GraphQL API, RPC API, and web sockets. And then I said web API or web services. An API which provides the services on web is called web API. And these APIs are deployed or installed within web server on internet. And web server provide these services to one or more than one application written in same or different languages. So web services or web APIs are language and application independent. So these APIs, web APIs are developed using two architectures. One is SOAP and one more is a REST. So SOAP based web services or web APIs, and here SOAP stands for Simple Object Access Control Protocol. Okay, and SOAP is a protocol used to exchange. Okay, used to exchange data between two applications. And SOAP exchange the data using which language? XML. Now here XML stands for Extensible Markup Language, right? And what are the characteristics? Allows only XML and it uses one language for configuration. And what is that language it uses? WSDL. And these web services work on different protocols like HTTP, HTTPS, SMTP, and TCP. And these are highly secured. But the drawback is XML occupies more space, means it require more bandwidth because XML required data as well as metadata. So, but modern web APIs are developed using one architecture called REST. So, yeah, REST stands for Representational State Transfer Protocol. It is an architectural style used by modern languages for developing web APIs or web services. Now, this APIs, the APIs which are developed using REST architecture are called RESTful web services or web APIs. Okay. Now, what are the rules for REST is allows only which data? JSON. So here data is exchanged between two applications using JSON format. That is JavaScript object notation. These web services or APIs work on different protocols like HTTP, HTTPS, and TCP and what? SMTP. And these REST web services are lightweight because it uses which one? JSON. Okay, JSON. Now this is what the difference between SOAP based web APIs and what REST web APIs. Only the difference is the way how you are communicating, the way how you are exchanging the data. In SOAP based, the data is exchanged using which format? XML format. In REST, the data is exchanged in which format? JSON format. Okay, XML occupies more space, but JSON occupies less space. Now, whenever you talk about a space, if it occupy more space, obviously efficiency will be decreased. If it occupies less space, then obviously it increases the efficiency. Okay. But both services work on HTTP, HTTPS, TCP as well as what? SMTP. Right? Yes. Then now this is a architectural style. This is one architecture, and this is one architecture, and this is one architecture, and this is one architecture. And this architecture implemented by Python people and develop one framework called DRF, which is called as Django REST framework. And Django REST framework dictate which rules, REST rules. Means you develop it by following the rules given by which protocol? REST protocol. Okay, it is implemented in Python language. For example, each language, for example, if you say Java REST API, Java REST API frameworks. Okay. If you say Java REST API frameworks, now you can find what is that? Spring Boot. Okay, Spring Boot is there here. Okay, Spring Boot. And there is one more is what? Quarking so Quark as right. Then one more is Micronaut, right? And there is one more is Java Lin. All these are implement which rules? REST rules. Now Java REST API framework really depends on your project needs. It means these are written in which language? Java language. This framework is nothing but a library. A framework provides two things. One is libraries. It provides libraries and it also provides runtime environment, right? So this is a library. What is the name of that is Spring Boot. Now this is written in which language? Java language. By using which rules? REST rules. By using which rules? REST. Now whenever you want to develop a RESTful web service, then you develop it by using which framework? Spring Boot. Whenever you want to develop a RESTful web service, you develop it by using which framework? Micro. Okay, in the same way, for example, .NET. Okay, .NET REST API framework. If you see .NET REST API framework, now you have a ASP.NET Core Web API. Now this is provided by whom? Microsoft. ASP.NET Core Web API. So this implement which protocol? REST protocol. It uses which architecture? REST architecture, or in previous versions it is called as which one? Web API. In the same way, if you are talking about Python, so what are the Python REST frameworks? REST API frameworks. Now there is a fast API. There is what? Django REST framework, and one more is what? Flask RESTful. All these are what? The frameworks which are used for developing which APIs? REST APIs, right? Yes. So, yes. Now, next, what I'm talking about is REST API frameworks. For developing REST APIs, you required what? For developing REST APIs, what you required? A framework. What you required? Framework. Okay, what framework define? What framework provide? Libraries. What it provide? Libraries. And those libraries you use it and build which applications? RESTful applications. Okay, right? Okay, RESTful applications by using those framework. Now you are using Django framework for developing which applications? Web applications. If you want to develop a view, how you develop a view? By using functions. You develop a view by using classes. Who's providing this? Django. How to develop a view? It is defined by whom? Django. In the same way, I want to develop a web API, RESTful web API. Then how can I develop it? I required one framework or not? Yes. That implement which principles? REST principles. Okay. Yes. So REST is a architectural style which is implemented in different languages. That may be Java, that can be .NET, that can be what? Python. That can be Java, that can be .NET, or that can be Python, any language. But is its style is the same or different? Same. But you are implementing in different languages. Okay, right. So REST. So what is a REST and RESTful? REST is an architectural style, and any web API or web service developed using REST architecture is called RESTful web services. RESTful web services. RESTful. Two things are there here. REST and RESTful. REST and RESTful API. REST is what? Architectural style. Okay, it is an architectural style. Okay, and what is a RESTful? What is a RESTful? RESTful is a true implementation that strictly adheres to all six constraints, including all these principles. It defines some principles. REST API defines some principle. Okay. So what are the principles here? The six guidelines are there. So any framework which follow these six guidelines, okay, that you call it as which one? RESTful. RESTful, an API should follow the six principle. Full, RESTful. Full means all, right? So any now who's given these rules by IBM, right? So REST stands for Representational State Transfer Protocol. It is an architectural style designed by Row Fielding in 2000 to help different computers talk each other over the internet. Instead of using complex protocols, REST uses the existing structure of the web. That is using which one? HTTP, that is Hypertext Transfer Protocol. It is a lightweight and flexible, making it the standard for modern web and mobile applications. Web and what is that? Mobile applications. Okay, right. But any framework which follow which principles? REST principles, that you call it as what? RESTful API. Okay, right? So don't be confused with these two terms, REST and RESTful. RESTful, what I mean to tell you is RESTful APIs are nothing but RESTful API are nothing but so any API which follows all the principles, which follows all the principles given by which one here? REST are called RESTful are called RESTful APIs are called RESTful APIs. Okay, RESTful APIs. So it should follow those six principles. I should follow those six principles. Then you call it as RESTful APIs. What are those principles here? Even though I'll tell you this, okay, that is statelessness. Okay, the server doesn't remember anything about previous request. So it means it uses which protocol? Stateless protocol to exchange the data between the client and server. So RESTful web services uses which protocol? HTTP. HTTP is which protocol? Stateless protocol. Means every request, each request sent by the client to server is what? New request. So server doesn't remember the request is come from which client. That is what you learn in session management. Session management or what? State management. In session management, what you learn? You maintain the state of the client. You persist the state of the client between multiple requests by storing whose information? Client information in cookies. Okay, cookies in the browser. Okay, you store in the server database. Okay. So, but whenever you talk about REST, always, always each request sent by the client to server should be what? New request. Means server should not remember what? Client. Then it should use which protocol? Stateless protocol. So RESTful web services or web APIs, it will work on which protocol? HTTP. And HTTP is what? Stateless protocol. That is the first rule. Every single request from the client must contain all the information to understand. And client server separation. The front end and back end are independent. You can change the database without affecting the UI. Means, what is the meaning of this? What is the meaning of this? Okay. Now front end and back end is what here separated means independent. They are not dependent. They are what? Independent. Okay. Means front end required some data from where? Database. Then it uses some API. Front end uses API to get the data from where? Database. But this front end and API, this both are what? Independent because this API can used by one front end or any front end, right? So these are dependent or independent? Independent. These are not dependent. These are what? Independent. And uniform interface means it uses it uses it uses one URL patterns. It uses a URL patterns. All requests should be look similar. This is usually means using URI to identify which one resources. URI is nothing but uniform resource identifier. That is nothing but endpoint. The web API what you develop that you call it as which one? Endpoint. Who will communicate with that endpoints? Client. But client can be any software. But all these endpoints or all these URI follow the same rules and regulate. It means it should look similar. It should not be different, right? It should not be different. That is third rule. And cacheability, like resources should define themselves as a cacheable or not to improve speed and reduce the server load. Okay, now caching is done at server side and layer system. A client should not able to tell if it's connected directly to the server to an intermediate like load balancer or what security layer. A client should not able to tell it's connected directly to the server or to an intermediate like load balancer or what security layer means whenever you are talking about this endpoints are nothing but the resources what you are using it. And these resources directly store within what? Server. This resources directly store in what? Server. But a client should not be able to tell if it's connected directly to the server, it is directly to the server or to an intermediate like load balancer or what? Security layer. Means you are just accessing resource. That's all. But you are not thinking about load balancing and you are not thinking about what? Security. Now code on demand. The server can occasionally send executable code like to the client. Means generally this APIs doesn't provide any code. This APIs provide only data. This provide only data. Why we are using APIs to get the data? Now mobile application required get the data. Mobile application want to insert the data. Mobile application want to delete the data. How it will do all this? You required one API. That API can be used by mobile application. That API is used by web application. That API is used by what? Any other applications. So this APIs are application independent. Okay, not only that, it uses some HTTP methods. It uses standard methods to communicate client with what? Server. Okay, API like get method, post method, put method, and what is that? Patch method, right? So all these are the methods which are used to perform which operations? Crude operations. Like if you want to create, then use which method? Post method. If you want to update, then use which method? Put method. Means it uses some standard methods. And these are called which methods? HTTP methods. Because REST will work on the top of which one? HTTP. If you want to insert data, you send a request using which method? Post method. If you want to delete data, then you send a request by using which method? Delete method. If you want to update the data, then you send a request by using which method? Put method or patch method. If you want to read the data, then you send a request to the API by using which method? Get method. So always you are using APIs to perform which operations? Crude operations. Okay. Like reading, modifying, deleting, and what? Retrieving, updating data. Right. So if it follow all these rules, then that you can call it as which APIs? RESTful APIs. Okay. Right. So RESTful APIs are nothing but any API which follows all the principles given by what? REST are called RESTful APIs. Okay, right. Now I just put this, but generally you don't require to remember all this. Okay, but sometimes they may ask this constraints are what? Rules. But always you develop API independent of any application. You always develop API independent of any application. It is used only for reading data. But this API doesn't give any code. For example, if you take a template, within template you can embed what? Code. Which code you can embed? JavaScript. Sir, no, that code is given to whom? Browser. But generally APIs doesn't give any code. It gives only data. APIs always gives what? Data. Okay, right? Where this data will be in database. This data will be in the database, or this data will be in what? Different sources. Okay. This data will be in the database, or this data will be in different sources. You have to remember only one thing. Why you are developing APIs? To manipulate or to retrieve the data from where? Databases are different sources. That is only one thing you have to remember. Okay, na? So this data is used by different applications. This data is used by different applications, right? So that is what you have to remember. Okay. So web APIs or REST APIs or RESTful APIs are used for performing which operations? Crude operations. Okay. You are trying to perform which operations? Crude operations, right? Now, crude operations, like it allows an API perform, okay, inserting, or which you call it as creating resource, okay, updating resource, okay, and deleting resource. Resource means data. Any problem is there? I'll try to write in different way. Like what is that? Inserting data, updating data, and then deleting data, and reading data from different different what? Different sources. And the source can be what here? Database, or it can be other sources. Other sources are like what? Applications. So one API can communicate with what? Another application to get the data. It can communicate with other applications to get what? data. So one web application communicate with what? Another web application using what? APIs, right? So this these operations, these operations are performed. These operations, which operations? Crude operations performed using a methods, standard methods provided by which protocol? HTTP protocol. HTTP protocol. So what are those methods are? You have all these methods like get method, post method. Okay. So these are the verbs which are used for performing operation. Example also given here. So HTTP methods. Now you have a methods like get method is for retrieving a list of products, a specific user or post, create, add a new user or submit a form. So put update method patch, partial update and delete for removing resource from the server, right? So it will use this standard methods to perform operations on the database. To perform the operations on what? Database. Okay, right? Now you can say that REST API uses which methods? REST API uses which methods? HTTP methods to communicate with what? To communicate with what? Server. To communicate with the server or to send a request to what? Program which is there at which side? Server side. And these programs you call it as which one? Endpoints. These programs you call it as which one? Endpoint. Right? Yes. Understood up to this? So why we are developing APIs? We are developing APIs mainly for getting data from database. Only reading data. APIs always used for web APIs always used for reading. I mean, getting data from where? Database. Okay. And this data used by different applications to perform different operations. Okay. That is what you have to remember. Okay. Right? Yes. I said no, like Google Pay. Google Pay is using an API. Which API? Bank API. Why it is using bank API? To perform operations. Yes or no? So how Google Pay will transfer the funds from one account to another account? Then it required an API provided by whom? Bank. Yes or no? In the same way that API, see what is a what is it what that API is doing? Is it modifying data or not? Yes. Suppose you are trying to pay you are trying to do the payment. You are doing the payment, right? Payment is done by Google Pay, na? No. Go payment is a service which is provided by whom? Google Pay. Okay, one service, but that service or that function calls a service provided by whom? Bank. Service provided by what? Bank. Now, is it Google Pay will provide all the services? No. For example, you can book a cylinder. You can book a cylinder, right? Okay, then book a cylinder of a specific which one? Gas company. Yes or no? But how Google Pay can book a cylinder? No, right? Then it should use the services. Services provided by whom? That company. Which company? HP. gas or Indian gas, right? They'll provide some services. They provide some services. When you book a cylinder, what will happen? You are calling one service. Which service? Web service. Provided by whom? Agency. Like that company or not? Yes. Can you book a cylinder on website or not? Yes. You can book a cylinder by using mobile app. From website you can do it. From mobile app you can do it. From Google Pay you can do it. From Phone Pay you can do it. From phone number also you can do it. But all these are using one API. All these are using one API. Understood? That is where APIs comes into the picture. You do the payment like you pay the bills, right? You pay the mobile bill, you pay what? LIC bill, you pay insurance bills, all the bills you pay it. Yes. But while paying, it will ask the company or organization, right? You're paying the insurance of which one? LIC. Then select the LIC and put all the details and do what? Payment. Then it is sending this serve is it is sending all these details to whom? API. Means one function will be there, right? It is calling one function provided by whom? LIC to do what? Payment. Now immediately you are getting payment receipt and all the things. But that is given by Google Pay or LIC? LIC. But who's calling those services by Google? Understood, right? Okay. So it means all the services are not provided by all the applications. Okay. So these are private. Actually, all the apps will allow us to pay the LIC bills? No. No, right? So it is a private. Private means you have to pay some money. Now Google pay some money to what? The service used by whom? LIC. So they are not public. Those are what? Private. If it is a public, it is free. You can directly use it. Now the way how you use Google Maps in your website to define the location, right? Yes. So that is where APIs come into the picture. Now till now we develop which application? Web application. Till now what we develop? Web application. Web application means which you open it from browser and do all the things that you call it as web application or web site. Now you develop web application. In the web application, now you want to add one feature. What is that feature is Google Pay. Right now you are developing e-commerce application. You want to add a Google Pay, Phone Pay. These features you want to add it. Then how can you add it? Then you should include the services of whom? Google Pay. That service is nothing but API. Your web application is communicating with the Google Pay by using some functions. Getting on that. So you are developing different applications, right? Now you take what do you call it as train reservation. You do train reservation from different apps. The main application is IRCTC. IRCTC that is main. Okay. But you can do it from different apps or not. Yes. It means those apps are using services provided by whom? IRCTC. Okay. So those are nothing but APIs. Getting or not? Right? So now you call those APIs by using different methods. So HTTP is provided various methods to communicate with it. Okay. Right. So now Python REST frameworks. Now there is a list of Python REST frameworks. REST frameworks are RESTful frameworks, right? For developing, for developing, for developing web APIs are RESTful APIs using Python, using Python language, using Python language. So Python is provided various what frameworks. So what are these frameworks? The first one is DRF. What is DRF stands for? Django REST framework. Django REST framework. And second one is what? Fast API. And then Flask RESTful API, a RESTful framework, and Fast API framework. So all these are the frameworks written in which language? Python language. And using these frameworks, you can develop which APIs? RESTful APIs. In which language? Python language. Now what we are talking about is Django. Okay, Django REST framework. Okay, I'm just telling you Django REST framework. So Django REST framework is a powerful toolkit provided provided on the top of on the top of which framework? Django framework. On the top of Django framework for developing web APIs or RESTful APIs, RESTful APIs using using Python programming language, using Python programming language, right? So Django REST framework is a powerful toolkit provided on the top of Django framework for developing web APIs or RESTful APIs using what? Python programming language. Okay, right? Yes. Now you need to know what is the REST API means. It allows the client to communicate with the server by using these methods, which allows to use communicate client with the server using these methods that you can call it as which APIs? REST APIs, right? So a REST API, a REST API, REST API, or in REST API, a client in REST API, in REST API, okay, client communicate with the server using various request methods, various request methods provided by which protocol? HTTP protocol. HTTP protocol, right? Now you have a different methods, right? So what are these HTTP methods? Already I dictated there, but still you should know these methods. What is the first method is get. Second is post. Third one is put. Fourth one is patch. Fifth one is delete. The meaning is get means reading. Post means creating. Put means update. And patch means partially updating. So partially updating and then delete means removing. Delete means what here? remove. So whenever you are developing a REST, always a client server communication is done by using which protocol? HTTP protocol using methods, various methods, right? For example, you are developing an application, web application using React. You are developing a web application using what? React JS. You are developing web application using React JS. Now this React JS required some data from where? From where? Database. Then what do you do it? You develop some API. You develop an API by using which one? Django REST framework. So whenever this React.js application required data, and get it by using which framework? Django REST framework. Or suppose this is web application and this web application want to communicate with another web application written in what? Django. Then how it is communicating by using some APIs, right? So API, it acts as an interface between two applications. Then what is the advantage? What is the advantage? What is the advantage of using? What is the advantage of using DRF? What is the advantage of using DRF? So now DRF means Django REST framework. Okay, DRF, Django REST framework. So what is the advantage of Django REST framework? So what is the advantage? Okay, now Django REST framework provides, provides the following features. Django REST framework provide the following features. First one is, okay, you can see whenever you'll say API, it is easy to develop what? APIs. Is easy to develop APIs. What is the meaning of this? Everything is provided by what? Framework. Then just use it and develop it. Just use it and what? Develop. Suppose without API, everything you have to write it. Everything you have to write it. With API provided by, with framework, everything is provided by framework. You just use it. You just use it. Okay. For example, I want to convert the model into JSON. I want to convert model instance to what? JSON. Okay, model instance means model object into what? JSON. If it is framework is not there, but I want to follow which principles? REST principles. Then how can I convert model object into a JSON? I have to read data and I should store in dictionary and from dictionary into what? JSON. So I have to do all this. Now that will take complex. That takes a lot of time and maintaining also very complex because you have to write the same thing again and again. Now the main principle of Django is dry principle. Means don't repeat yourself. Don't repeat the code again and again. So that redundant code is provided by whom? Framework. That repeated code is provided by whom? Framework. That is what you do it by using function-based views and what? Class-based views. Function-based views, you will write the same code again and again. Now that is avoided when you move to which one? Class-based views. Rendering, every time you have to write it. Okay. Rendering form, template, everything you have to write. But that can be avoided by just writing a class and defining what? Properties. Properties are what? Attributes. So that avoid code redundancy. So framework provide easy way of creating what applications. You don't require to write the things. It provide lot of predefined things. You need to know which one to be used when. So you don't write a large amount of code or huge amount of code. Adding or not, right? So that is easy to develop APIs. Okay. Then it provide. I said no, just now I said I want to convert a query set into JSON. Okay, I want to convert query set into what? JSON. Because in REST APIs, how the data is exchanged? How data is exchanged in REST? JSON format. How it is exchanged in JSON. Okay, now client application wants some data. Then it will ask API. It will call API. Then API get the data from where? Database. And after getting data from database, how it will give the data to the client? How it will give the data to the client application or partner application? In which format? JSON format. Then query set is a collection of what? Model instances. Then you have to convert query set into what? Dictionary. Means how can I convert if it is manually? I have to create one list. I have to create one list. Then within that list, I need to read model instances from query set. I have to store that data into a dictionary, and that dictionary you have to add into the list, and that list you should convert from Python list into what? JSON, and then you have to send to what? Client application. So it is a complex procedure or not? Yes. That is manual. If framework is not there, I can do it manually. Okay, but in development in real time, not allowed. Compulsory, they ask you to use what? Framework. So this process, generally you call it as serialization. This process is called as which one? Serialization. You learn serialization like in Python pickle module, where you serialize, like converting Python object into what? Bytes. So pickling is nothing but converting Python data types into bytes data type, and unpickling is bytes into what? Object structure, right? So that is pickling. That is same thing you call it as what? Serialization. But what is serialization in this case? Converting model instances into what? JSON. JSON into what? Model. So for that, I don't require to write any lengthy code. So it is provided inbuilt what? Serializers. Framework is provided inbuilt serializers. Means serialization of data is what? Easy. It provides some inbuilt serializers. Serialization of data. Serialization means just now I said converting okay data into which format? JSON format. So for that you don't require to write any code. That is provided by whom? Framework. That is provided by framework. Not only that, now Django REST framework provide what it provide? Authentication. It provide authentication and what? Authorization. Inbuilt authentication and what? Authorization. Authorization means what? Permissions. I said, now you want to build a private API. Then what it required? Authentication. Authentication at the same time, it should have even permissions to access or to perform that certain operation. That you call it as authentication and what? Authorization. Okay, then next one is now these are browsable APIs. Browsable. What is the mistake here? Browse, browsable, browsable, browsable APIs. Browsable APIs means now where you can test this APIs within the browser. Means you can call this APIs from where? Browser. You can call this APIs from where? Browser. That you call it as which one? Browsable APIs. Browsable API. So browsable API. Django REST framework provide browsable API means the browsable API is one of the standout features of the Django REST framework. It provides a user-friendly web interface that allows you to interact with your API directly from where? Browser. For what? Testing and debugging. For testing and what? Debugging. Making development, right? So that you can call it as which one? Browsable API. So Django REST framework allows you to develop which APIs here? Browsable APIs. Now where you can call this APIs from where? Browser and perform certain operations. Perform certain operations, then pagination. Pagination. We'll talk about this pagination. Pagination is nothing but if API is fetching some thousand records from database, then it try to send the data in page by page. Send page by page. Pagination. First you fetch 10 records. Then next you fetch what? 10. Suppose you take mailbox. If you take your mailbox, it will show you how many mails. It will show you how many mails. In mailbox, it will show you how many mails at a time. Some 15 to 20, 10 mails. How many mails it will show you? 10 to 15 mails. Okay. Then you click on next or previous. So that next previous, that you call it as which one? Pagination. Miss, is it fetching the data at a time? No. So that concept you call it as which one? Pagination. Pagination. And not only that, it provides some filters. It provides inbuilt filters and searching. Filters and searching both are same. Now, when you're working with web APIs, you can add some filters and what? Search options. Web API, you can put some filters and what? Search options. So inbuilt filters and what? Search options. That is also supported by which one? Django REST framework. Easy to develop APIs, serialization of data, authentication and what? Authorization and browsable APIs means you can test this APIs by calling from where? Browser. And next one is pagination and you can add filters. Filters and what? Searching options. Filters and searching options. Now it will provide what do you call it as token based authentication. It will provide which one? Token based authentication. Token based authentication. Token based. Token is nothing but some value. Token is nothing but what? Value. Okay, suppose token. Like you see some movies, right? Okay, if you show some paper, उसके ऊपर कुछ लिख के रहते हैं ना, then only will give you some money. Smuggling, right? How smuggling is done with the help of secret code. That secret code is called which one? Token. That secret code is called which one? Token. If that code is not matched, then is it anything happens? No. Okay, that is called token based authentication. Token based authentication is there and there is authentication is there. What is this authentication? User credentials like username and what? Password. But it is also support token based authentication like JWT, which stands for JavaScript Web Token. JWT stands for what? JavaScript Web Token, right? Then now it is also provide what do you call it as a powerful, you can say a powerful validation system. Inbuilt validation system which is used for validating what? Data. Like you want to validate You want to validate this data is correct to convert into what? JSON. Before converting into what? JSON, I want to validate. Or before converting JSON to what? Model, I want to validate. So it is having some powerful validation system to convert one type to what? Another type. That is what you call it as serializing and deserialization, right? So all these are some of the advantages or features of using which one? Django REST framework. This is the official website. If you see, you can see Django REST framework. This is an official website. Okay, right? This is official website. So we can test it by using what is it called as a tool called which one? Swagger. So we'll discuss that how to work with this Swagger tool, right? Yes. Okay. Now all these are advantages of using Django REST framework. Okay. Then next is how to work with this. How to work with the Django REST framework. How to develop a REST APIs. Okay. Now, what are the basic steps? What are the basic steps for developing which one? A REST API or web API or web service. A pura एक ही है. You know web services, you should not say no. I know web services. That web service is nothing but API. That web service is nothing but what? API only. Don't think that it's a something else, right? So don't think that it is something else. Okay, right? Now, what are the basic steps? Nothing. Now, what you have to do is anyway, you have to install Django REST, install Django REST framework. Okay, install Django REST framework. Okay, so how you install it? You can install from command prompt. Okay, or you can install in VS Code. So pip install Django REST framework. We changed what is the path? REST framework. What happened here? So REST underscore, I think. So what you have to do is first you have to install REST framework. Okay. So what you have to do is pip install. What I said here, same only, no? Did I give any mistake? No? Uh, some mistake. Mistake is there. What I installed? What I've written previously? Django frame spelling is wrong. Okay, now this is already installed, right? So what is the current version of this REST framework is 3.16. Okay. What is the current version is 3.16. So just install this. So install the Django REST framework. So after installing the Django REST framework, the second step is how can I use this REST framework? How can I use this REST framework? So in the project, okay, in the project, you create a project, right? In the project, now you go to apps. Sorry. In the project, in project settings, you have to install. What do you have to install? An application. You have to install one application. And what is the name of the application is REST framework. REST underscore what here? Framework. REST underscore framework. You have to install the application, right? So second step is install. Install REST framework. Install REST framework application. Okay, by configuring in, when configuring in, where you are configuring in settings.py. Settings.py. In settings.py, what do you have installed? Apps. Installed apps. Installed apps. So installed apps. And here you have a lot of apps installed, right? And within that, you have to install one app. What is the app you have to install? REST, REST underscore what? Framework. So this app you have to install. Okay. Yes. That's all. Now these are the things what we have done, right? So what we did, we installed the Django REST framework, and then we installed what? Application as a part of your project. As a part of your project. Then what are the main things required to develop API? Okay, right? What are the main things required to develop a API? So don't think that this is something else. How you develop an API? By writing a view. What do you do it? A view only. But this view generate which output? This view will generate which output? Is it view will generate HTML output or JSON output? JSON. Web application, it will generate which output? HTML. Template. It will generate what? Template. Template is for presentation. Okay, it is only for presentation, displaying. But API role is what? Reading data. Returning what? Data. But how it is returning data in which format? JSON format. So here your API is nothing but what now? View. Your view only. Okay. So don't think that it is something else. You're developing a view only, but that view, what it returns? Data. What it returns? Data. It doesn't return what? Template. So if you are saying a template, then what will happen? It will try to put that template into what? Browser. But this API's use is only reading and writing and deleting what? Data. Then what is the output it generates? Data. Data only. But this data is written in which format? Or this data is written in which format? JSON format. This data is written in which format? JSON format. It means what your view is doing, it is generating a response in HTML or JSON? JSON. Now this data is used by what? Mobile application. This data is used by which application? Web application. This data is used by any application. So it is same. It is easy for you because you already work with the views. Getting or not? Okay. So first thing is you have to develop an endpoint. You have to develop an endpoint. This endpoint is nothing but view. This endpoint is nothing but what? View only. This endpoint is nothing but view. Now these are the core components. To build an API with DRF, you work with three main layers. One is what? Serializers. I say no serializers. What is the role of serializers? Converting model to what? JSON. JSON to what? Model to perform certain validations, right? And view set to handle the logic of which one? Requests. Okay. Then there is a routers. That is where you define URL configuration. Okay. Yes. We'll just see this. Core components. Third one is building. What are the building? Building what? API. Building web API or REST API. For that, what you required? Three things you required. See, without using framework also you can do it. Without using framework also you can do it. But if I'm writing the code without using framework, then what is the use of framework? Yes or no? You need to write the same code again and again, right? So that's the reason in real time, you don't do what? Manual coding. You try to use what? Framework. So I'm telling you only using framework, but I'm not telling you without using framework. So that is a that you don't require to know it also, but people will teach. Even I teach in the beginning when I start Django batches, but later I realize that there's no use. It's only time waste because finally you have to come to DRF only. You have to develop it using DRF. So companies ask what? Django REST framework, but they don't ask you can you develop API without DRF? No, because they follow some standards. But they cannot write it with your own logics or something, right? Okay, right? So that's the reason telling teaching without framework is time waste because serialization I have to do it. Who will do serialization? Programmer. You write the code for serialization, but here code is already there in the form of which one? Serializers. In the form of what? Serializers. I'll tell you one example without using framework. Okay. So serializers, main components are like this. First component is serializer. What is the first one is serializers are there. Now this acts as a bridge between the complex data like Django model instances and content type like JSON or what? XML. And they also handle data validations for incoming requests. And second one is a view or view set. And this will handle which one? Request and generate the response. Means this is an API which contain the logic for okay reading data, creating data, removing data, as well as what? Updating. Now third one is routers. This is for configuring URLs. Now that you can call it as which one? Routers. Okay, right? So these are the three core components for building API. Now let me tell you a simple API that get a welcome message. Okay. Now what I'm doing is same. Don't think something else. Okay. Right. Okay, right now, okay, right. So now here I'm creating a project. Django admin start project, project name. I just write here web API project one, web API project one, right? And within this, open this project, and within the project, you are creating what? Application. Same. Same. What is that application? Create application, start application. Start application, API. Anything you can give. Name कुछ भी हो सकता है. Okay, you can give any name, but I've given name as what? API. My application name is what? API. Okay, so create a project and create application. Okay, after this, so open the project here, open folder, and what is the name of the folder here? Web API 1. Okay, now go to API and select the views. Now here I am writing a view. View is nothing but in this case service. It is a web service, right? Where you are sending a request. You are sending a request to this. Which one? View. But this view will take the request from home client application. Which application? Client application. Client application can be any application. This client application can be any application, right? So what is the name of this is some first request or anything. Suppose assume that it is listing, okay, list which data, employee data. But where is this data in? This employee data is there in what? List. And this list contain employee number. This list contain employee. Suppose, okay, list employee. I want employee, I'll take. Not number of employees. If you want number of employees, okay, take this list. So there is an employee number and what? Name. So this is a data requested by whom? Client application. So there is an employee number and there is an employee name. See, it is only for data. Always the API manipulates what? Data. So there is an employee number again. I take employee number is 103, e name, and this is the name of the employee. This is a list. Okay, list is understood by only what? Python. But other languages understand Python? No. Then it should return the data in a format understood by what? Other languages or other applications. So whenever you are talking about REST, always the data is exchanged in which format? JSON format. Means you have to convert this list into JSON. How you convert this list into JSON? Import. What is the name of the module is? JSON. Okay, list import. Which format? JSON. And then how to convert this? Employee list equal to JSON dot. What is the method is? Dumps. What is the name of the method I'm using? Dumps. Which object? Employee object. Means you are sending data of which type? JSON type. Now you have to send a response. You have to send a response, right? A response. Response means output. Now from Django dot HTTP, what is the response is HTTP response. Okay, response equal to HTTP response. HTTP response, and here you are trying to define the content. What is the content is? Or what is the content is? EMP list. What is the content is? EMP list. Okay, but this content is which type? Or this content is which type? Or this content is which type? JSON type. Then while defining this, while sending the content, you should tell the client application you are sending the data in which format? JSON format. Then you have to define MIME type or not? Yes. You have to define the MIME type. That is nothing but content. So that is nothing but what? Content type. Content types here. HTTP response. HTTP response. So whenever you create an HTTP response, HTTP response provided some headers, right? Now you can see HTTP response and you can add a response headers. Okay, what is that response header is? You can add a content type. Now this is a request, right? This is an HTTP response. And where you define HTTP response, this is a text and you are saying content type is a text and what is that? Plain text. But I don't want this content is a text. No, it is not a text. It is not a text. I'm saying your content type. So content type equal to what is this? Application. What is this here? Application means who understand this format? Application. Type is what? Application. Format is what? JSON. What is an extension is? JSON, right? And then return response. Means you are telling the client application, you are telling the client application, you are sending the data in which format? JSON format. You are telling the client application, you are sending the data in which format? JSON format. Understood this? Tell me here. But previously you are sending output in which format? Or previously you send output in which format? HTML. HTML or not? Yes, HTML is for presentation. JSON is for representing data and sending data from one application to another. Now, what is the name of the service? Tell me, what is the name of the service? List employee. List employee is a service which lists employees, which gets which which gives which data? Employees data, which will return whose data? Employees data. To whom? This data is given to whom? Any application required employees data. Mobile application, web application, any application required whose details? Employee details. It just uses this service. Now for this, I should give the URL or not? Yes. Now go to settings, settings.py, install app, but I'm not using any Django REST framework or use any framework. Django REST is used or not used? Not used. I'm developing everything using what? By following the rules of REST. But are you using any library belongs to REST framework? No. Are you imported anything in Vue? Are you imported anything called REST framework? Or you said import? Are you said import REST framework like this? No. Means are you using framework or not using framework? Not using framework. You're not using framework. If it is a framework, this list is converted automatically into what? JSON by using JSON response. By using which response? JSON response. But Django is provided which response? HTTP response. And JSON response is a wrapper of which one? HTTP response only. But are you imported any framework here? No. You are not imported any framework. So without using this, I'm developing it. Just install API. What is your application is? API. Now comes to the urls.py and from. Okay, this is an endpoint. API dot views. Import. Import. What is the name of the view? Uh, what is the name? EMP lister. List employees. List employees. Now path is what is a URL list EMP and list employees. Any name you can give it, right? But this is generating the output in the form of JSON. Okay, can you call this API from browser? Tell me here. Can you call this from the browser? Can you call this API from browser? Yes. Open the browser. But before that, install application. So Python manage dot py run server. What happened here? Two commas. So what is the name of this is here? List. List what here? EMP. Now you can see it is generated some data or not? Yes. Now this is in which format? JSON format. Now this data is used by any application. This data can used by any application. So that application you call it as client application. Now is it browser is a client? Yes. Mobile application is a client? Yes. Python program is a client? Yes. Java program is a client? Yes. All these applications can use this data and perform operations, right? Then tomorrow I'll tell you how to develop a client application and how to send or how to use this endpoint into what? Client application. Okay. And then we'll start developing it using DRF. Okay. Na? So I'm not telling you without using DRF, that is waste of time. Okay. Na? Right. So tomorrow we'll see with DRF. So today we'll stop it here and tomorrow we'll continue this. Okay. Thank you. We'll see tomorrow.